to learn how to control your own state. Now in NLP, there are techniques called anchoring, and there are others as well, but anchoring is one really good example of how to learn how to control your state to feel either confident or calm or whatever particular state is useful.
Hi, so welcome to the Success Mindset YouTube channel. We are joined again by our good friend, Jeremy Lazarus. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And Jeremy today is going to be talking about sports performance. And I know this is something that you've got a huge amount of experience in because you do coach some elite athletes.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So when you're looking at sports performance and kind of the key concepts, the key foundation stones of sports performance, I know that some of that methodology has been replicated across business. Why do you think it's so important? Why is there this focus?
I think it's not necessarily about the methodology. I think it's more about the attitudes and the principles. So it was interesting. I did a session for Dame Kelly Holmes. She's got an organisation called the Dame Kelly Holmes Legacy Trust. And I ran some sessions in, I can't remember, 2010, 2011, something like that. And one of the sessions was with a group of elite athletes who were transitioning from being an elite athlete into the workplace. And they were concerned about would they ever get a job and why would an organisation want them? They've never worked in an organisation. I said, what are the attributes of an elite athlete? What have you had to do? And they listed all the attributes, things like determination, resilience, achieving goals, teamwork, focus, those sorts of principles. And like all organizations, all businesses, I used to be an accountant, all businesses would want that. They want people who can achieve goals, who can work in teams and get things done, etc. So I think it's the mindset of elite athletes and sports performance experts as much as the actual techniques themselves.
And when you're thinking about key things to concentrate on, and I'll give you a quick anecdote from myself. You know, I've took up running maybe 3 or 4 years ago, absolutely love it. And I'm trying to get my half marathon time up. And during lockdown, because we're currently filming during COVID lockdown, during lockdown, I've used the principles that Matthew Syed put in his book Bounce, which were around purposeful practice, that kind of stuff. And I've put all them into effect. I've managed to really make an impact on my half marathon time. But when you're looking at sort of elite athletes, or even if you're taking this into business, what key things will keep getting you better and better? And obviously there is the mindset that you've talked about, but what key things will keep helping someone get better and better?
Okay. I think it's having a clear purpose for what you're doing, having clear goals, being open to feedback and adjusting what you're doing. If what you're doing is not working the way you want, adjust what you're doing. One particular tool, which I know is very, very useful, both in sport and business, I use with a lot of my clients, is something called performance profiling. Now, performance profiling is where for any particular activity, let's call it playing tennis, for example, you list the attributes of an effective tennis player. So like forehand, backhand, serve, volley, smash, physical fitness, mental strength, for example. You list the attributes and then you rank out of 10 your level of competence compared to someone who is, someone you're aiming to reach. And then you work any score that's not 10, you work until you increase the score. So it's about, I think, was it the Japanese talk about constant and never-ending improvement? Is it Kaizen? I think it's an example. Performance profiling is an example of how to work towards constant and never-ending improvement.
And I mean, that's a lovely segue into my next question, because, Michael Jordan, for example, very famously said that other people, the reason why he was asked why he was the best, and he said, people compete to be where I am. I compete to be where I know I can be. Yeah. And that's a very, very different mindset, isn't it? That's the peak of the peak performance, if you like. And, you've kind of already mentioned mindset a lot, but why is cutting out the external and just having that killer focus on yourself, why is that so important?
Well, I'm going to push back a little bit. Sometimes you can. It's not about cutting out the external. It's knowing which parts of the external to pay attention to. So if someone externally is giving you really good advice, take it.
Yeah.
But if people aren't giving you good advice, ignore it. Basically,
Yeah.
I think it's I think at some point when you're playing elite sport, it's got to be about you and the competition and so and what you're doing. So whether it's pistol shooting, whether it's basketball, whether it's football, any sport, at some point it's the person, the individual athlete or competitor who's got to do what he or she's got to do. And so I think it's important they have the resilience themselves, the focus themselves, the inner strength and confidence to be able to deal with whatever the competition is going to throw at them.
And that makes a lot of sense, and I can totally see what you mean about you take the best bits. It's almost like modelling, isn't it?
Yes.
You're modelling and you're taking advice and that continuous improvement cycle. So I guess my last question, Jeremy, and this is how we sort of always wrap up these kind of subject-specific videos, is tangible takeaways for people. So if someone's watching this and let's say, they might not be an elite athlete, but someone that wants to improve their tennis, their forehand, or running, or could be whatever it is, what key things could people put into practice to enhance their performance?
Okay. So I think it's about having goals. Mm-hmm. Actually, it's an important point. Actually, in sports, there's 3 types of goals. There's, let me tell you what they are, then I explain them. Outcome goals, performance goals, process goals. So outcome goals, if you like the big picture, to win the 100 meters gold. Yeah. With the best will in the world, that's not always going to be in the control of the athlete. So that's why there are performance goals. Performance goals are what's the performance you need to put in to give you the best chance of achieving the outcome goal. And that would almost always be within the control of the athlete. So in this case, it could be to run the 100 meters in, let's say, 9.6 seconds, for example. And then there are process goals. So process goals are the specific nitty-gritty bits that people could do to improve their performance. So it could be anything to do with technical aspects or physical aspects of doing bench pressing 100 kilograms, for example. So if the athlete can subdivide the goals to know the real big picture outcome goal, what performance they're aiming for, and what the processes are, plus to have some kind of time frame on it. So maybe in this season, I'm aiming to run, let's say, a typical club sprinter might be to run the 100 meters in 11 seconds. And next season, my target is to be in 10.8 seconds. See what I mean? So it's to have those kind of goals set over time as well. So I think those are important takeaways. I think to learn how to control your own state. Now in NLP, there are techniques called anchoring, and there are others as well. But anchoring is one really good example of how to learn how to control your state to feel either confident or calm or whatever particular state is useful. I think being open to feedback, to seeking advice from people who have got something to offer. So whether it is a sports performance coach, whether it is a fellow runner or tennis player who can offer some advice, or just get some coaching.
Absolutely. And I think when you're talking about state, I mean, we've talked about state in various guises throughout these series of interviews with yourself and other contributors. And I mean, state is absolutely paramount, isn't it? Because I guess if you've got an elite athlete, or even if it's someone who's maybe a club runner or someone that does any sport at any level, you can have the greatest skill in the world, but if you don't have that state to execute when it matters, it will pull everything else down, won't it?
Yeah, and that's a really interesting phrase, when it matters.
Yeah,
because you find some people who can be good in practice or in golf for the first 15, 16 holes, but the last couple of holes, when the pressure's on and they've got to hit one straight down the fairway, perhaps they let their emotions get the better of them.
Yeah. And I always think back to, people talk about people like David Beckham in the past and, you know, the kind of money these guys earn. But, you know, if you look at when he took that free kick against Greece, I mean, you don't get much bigger pressure on a world stage like that. And the guy executed perfectly. And that is why they get big bucks.
Exactly.
You know, that's been brilliant, Jeremy. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure, Damien. Pleasure.
So as we sign off all these videos, make your life a masterpiece, my friends. Go out and execute, do what you need to do, and take the tips from people like Jeremy and put them into action. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.